Chapter 11:14. Soon, she realized that it was not just one person who was refining the pill, but two. On a short mountain peak, two youths were facing each other. There was a cauldron in front of each of them. Flames were rising from the cauldrons, and one could vaguely see a pill the size of a longan fruit. The rich medicinal fragrance came from this cauldron. There was a stone platform beside each of them. There were several black jade tokens on one stone platform, while there was only one on the other stone platform. This seemed to be a competition. There were a few people standing around the two youths, as if they were watching the competition. As for the black jade token on the stone platform, it should belong to them. Chu Luiyue took a closer look. The two youths looked to be around 23 or 24 years old. The one on the left was tall and skinny. He wore a blue robe and had a decent appearance. His eyes were fixed on the pill that was about to be completed in the cauldron. His originally fair face was slightly flushed, and fine sweat appeared on his forehead. It was obvious that he was at the end of his rope. On the other hand, the person opposite him wore a black brocade robe and had deep facial features. Compared to his opponent, his expression was much more relaxed. The outcome of this battle was clear at a glance. Looks like Tuoba Xian is going to win again. Elder Qiao Yi seemed to be used to this scene. He stroked his beard and said, "If he wins this round, he will have won 5 rounds in a row." Chu Luiyue followed his gaze and realized that he was staring at the youth with deep facial features. Most of the black jade tokens were indeed placed on the stone platform beside him. Clearly, everyone believed that he would win. On the other hand, the blue-robed youth only had one black jade token on the stone platform. That should be his. Elder Qiao Yi sensed her gaze and saw the curiosity in her eyes. He chuckled and explained, "That's right. They are betting on pills." Betting on pills. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. That's right. There are many celestial physician students in the academy. They are not convinced of each other's strength, so they often bet on pills. The two participants will choose the time and place to compete. Whoever could refine a higher grade pill with better medicinal effects would be considered the winner. However, what was different from a normal competition was that before the competition, they had to place their bets. Anything was fine with this bet. As for the spectators, they also have to place bets before the competition starts. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. Other than that, if I win the bet, there should be other rewards, right? A simple bet wasn't enough to make these geniuses scramble like ducks. It was fine if it happened once in a while, but if it happened often, it was really unnecessary. If he had the time, he might as well use it to research pill recipes. Senior brother, I just wanted to take a risk. I should be the one thanking you. You won't blame me for sharing your points, right? Haha. How could this be? Zhong Sun laughed. He had won quite a bit in this comeback, so it was not a big deal to share some with this junior brother. Most importantly, this person was the only one who stood out to support him when he was at his weakest. He had to admit that he did not have much confidence in himself at that time. Only this junior brother of his helped him to calm his mind. That was more important than anything else. Zhong Sun walked to another stone platform. Tuoba Xian had already stood up with a complicated expression. "Everyone, I won't stand on ceremony with you for the previous bet and points," Zhong Sun said with a smile. Tuoba Xian took a deep breath. "If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to admit defeat. Take it. I'll get it back from you next time." Zhong Sun touched each of the black jade tokens with his own. Rays of light flashed. Chu Luiyue realized that the black jade tokens also had their own secrets. After Zhong Sun searched through all the black jade tokens, he walked back to her side and said with a smile, "I'm sorry. Little junior brother, give it to me." Chu Luiyue handed her token over. With a flash of light, a few lines of small words appeared on her black jade token. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned it and realized that there were a few more things inside. There were herbs, prescriptions, and so on. There was a number at the bottom. 1,000. That should be her share of the points. Senior brother, my name is Zhong Sun. Zhong Sun smiled and returned the items to Chu Luiyue. You deserve all of this. Don't stand on ceremony. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment but finally took it and smiled. Thank you, Senior Brother Zhong Sun. This black jade token indeed had the same effect as the universe ring. As if seeing through her thoughts, Zhong Sun explained, a lot of things can be stored in the black jade token. As the points increase, the space will become larger. Moreover, as long as it enters your black jade token, it will be marked with your aura. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it being stolen or robbed. Chu Luiyue thought that this thing was indeed convenient. Just this point alone could dispel many people's crooked thoughts. The bets won from normal pill gambling, or the items that you take the initiative to give away, will also be recorded. It won't cause trouble. This made Chu Luiyue regard the black jade token in her hand even more highly. I didn't know that this thing was so formidable, of course. The black jade token of every student in the academy is specially refined by the elder of the armament master. Elder Qiao Yi added. As he spoke, he walked over and looked at Chu Luiyue with a surprised gaze. You're quite lucky. Even under such circumstances, you actually won the bet. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. Chapter 11:16. Elder Qiao Yi's previous worries were a little unnecessary. He never would have thought that although Chu Luiyue had no status or background, he relied on a pill bet to help her gain a foothold. At the very least, with a senior like Zhong Sun taking the initiative to help her, it could save her a lot of trouble. Although most celestial physicians were proud, they would have a good impression of those who chose to stand on their side in times of trouble. Zhong Sun brought Chu Luiyue around. After interacting for a period of time, he felt that this new junior brother was not bad. Although he was young, he was very sensible and polite. His appearance could only be considered delicate and clean, and he was not an eye-catching existence in the crowd. However, there seemed to be a natural noble aura in his bones. This rare aura made him stand out from the rest. At first, Zhong Sun felt that since the other party had supported him during the pill bet, he had to give him some face. But slowly, he had some thoughts of befriending him. This young man named Chu Yu was indeed outstanding in all aspects. He should be the young master of some aristocratic family. Zhong Sun thought to himself. This kind of bearing was definitely not something an ordinary person could have. Even though Zhang Xian didn't say much about his background, seemingly intending to conceal it, there were quite a few students who did the same here as well, so it wasn't too surprising. Therefore, Zhong Sun did not care much. Chu Luiyue followed him to visit many places, but they did not meet many people on the way. It's almost the end of the month, and everyone is busy cultivating and preparing for the examination at the beginning of the month. Walking on a shady stone road, Zhong Sun explained. In addition to the new students taking the examination, the older students also have their own missions. You have to know that the competition here is very intense. Although Zhong Sun said this with a smile, it was not difficult to see his serious expression. Chu Luiyue nodded. The #1 academy in the Divine Ruins world gathered all the talents in the world. It would be strange if the competition was not intense. I just had a breakthrough a few days ago, so I wanted to find Tuoba Xian to practice. Actually, he was not too confident. Who knew? It could only be said that no matter how strong you were, you had to treat every pill refinement with caution and go all out. Otherwise, there will be people waiting to pull you down at any time. That senior martial brother seems to be breaking through soon. Chu Luiyue said. Zhong Sun looked at her in surprise. How do you know? Chu Luiyue paused. This kind of thing was actually very easy to see. However, the prerequisite was that one's strength had to be greater than the other party's, or at least the same. Tuoba Xian was a 9th-grade celestial physician. He seemed to be trying to concoct a 9th-grade pill, but he didn't succeed. Although Chu Luiyue had not fully recovered his strength, his eyesight was still there. However, these words could not be said. I guessed. Chu Luiyue said with a smile. When I want to break through, I also like to find people to spar with. Zhong Sun saw her sincere expression and did not doubt her. There's another reason why he agreed to my invitation. If he can win 5 rounds in a row, his points will double. Tuoba Xian was confident that he could win, so he agreed to this bet. Unfortunately, he was too impatient. Points. Points again. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask, it seems that points are really very important? Of course. Zhong Sun laughed. You just entered the academy, so it's normal that you don't understand these things. Although Elder Qiao Yi has already explained it to you, there are many things that you have to experience slowly before you can truly understand. As he spoke, he sized up Chu Luiyue. Do you want the formula for a 9th-grade pill? Chu Luiyue looked at his face and swallowed the words not interested. She smiled slightly, yes. In the academy, a 9th-grade pill formula can be bought with 1,000 points. Of course, it's a low-grade one. If you want a middle-grade or high-grade one, you have to add points. However, as long as you have enough points, there's nothing you can't buy here. As Zhong Sun spoke, his expression was somewhat agitated. Lingxiao College had been passed down for 10,000 years and had a deep foundation. It was definitely not inferior to any first-rate family in the Divine Ruins world. Or even stronger. Things that couldn't be found outside, things that couldn't be bought with money, things that were priceless, and things that people had never even heard of, were all available here. As long as you have enough points, you can exchange for it. This was enough to show how important points were. Chu Luiyue blinked and nodded as if he had understood. If that's the case, then it's really important. Doesn't that mean my current 1,000 points are useless? It was only enough to buy a pill formula for a lower 9th-grade pill. It was not enough to waste time and feelings. However, Zhong Sun did not see the faint disdain in her eyes. So, once you enter, you must work hard to earn points. But you don't have to worry. You've only just arrived today, and you've already gone from 100 to 1,000. You're already better than many people. Over time, your points will quickly accumulate. After he finished speaking, he noticed that the young man in front of him had his head lowered slightly. He didn't know what he was thinking. Chu Yu. Chu Yu. After shouting twice, the young man raised his head and smiled at him. His black eyes were shining brightly under the sunlight. Senior brother Zhong Sun is right. That was definitely not an illusion. Then, his gaze shifted and he looked at the gap on the city gate that had been cut open. It's been a few years since we last met, but your patience has improved by quite a bit. Elder Hua Feng snorted. Let's see how long you can last this time. Elder Hua Feng didn't sleep the entire night. The next morning, he sensed that someone was coming. It was the next elder in charge of receiving them, Guan Song. Elder Guan Song was shocked when he saw Elder Hua Feng's haggard expression. What's going on? I've only been guarding here for half a day, how did it become like this? Elder Hua Feng choked. He couldn't say that he was waiting for that little scourge. It's nothing, it's nothing. It's good that you're here. Elder Guan Song glanced at the empty wine pot on his waist and said with concern, why don't you go back earlier? I think no need. Elder Hua Feng refused straightforwardly. He had already changed his mind. He insisted on waiting here. Elder Hua Feng waited for 3 days. Several elders had changed in the middle, but Elder Hua Feng still stood his ground and didn't leave. However, no matter how he waited and searched, that person was still nowhere to be seen. Elder Hua Feng's heart was devastated. If you're back, you should have come out after hiding for a few days. If you don't come back, Elder Hua Feng's eyes lit up. Could it be that little scourge really didn't come back? After thinking for a long time, Elder Hua Feng finally returned the day before the beginning of the month. I'm not waiting anymore. Taking in a disciple is more important. At this moment, on a certain mountain within Lingxiao College, in the middle of the open space, 2 young men were facing each other. The hundreds of people in the surroundings all gathered into a circle. Beside the 2 young men were 2 stone platforms. On top of each of them were their own black jade tokens. The atmosphere was tense. Obviously, this was another pill bet. But at this moment, the 2 young men had yet to start, and everyone's gaze was on a figure in the crowd. It was a young man in a green brocade robe. His features were delicate and clean. Chu Yu, who do you bet on to win this round? Zhong Sun, who was standing beside him, asked. As soon as he said this, the scene became even quieter. Some people subconsciously held their breaths and stared at the youth who was being questioned. It was as if they were waiting for his answer. Under these blazing gazes, Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. Things seemed to be a little serious. In fact, it was very simple. 3 days ago, she asked Zhong Sun to take her to see if there were any other pill bets. She wanted to earn some pocket money for herself. In the end, after she won 5 consecutive rounds, things began to develop out of control. Many people heard that a junior brother had just joined the academy and won 5 consecutive rounds of pill bets. The key was that he chose all 5 rounds with high odds. Just when everyone thought that he would be defeated, he turned the tables and directly earned the points that countless people had painstakingly accumulated for a long time. This allowed this junior brother to earn 100 times the starting point on the first day of school. Once this news spread, it immediately caused quite a stir. Pill bets were very common in the academy. On one hand, everyone could learn from each other. On the other hand, it could also promote entertainment and adjust one's mood. Therefore, as long as someone started, there would be many people following. Most of them would win and lose. After all, there were too many aspects to pay attention to when it came to pill refinement. Even if one's level was higher, they could lose if they made a slight mistake in the competition. This kind of uncertainty also made pill bets more interesting. But now, a fledgling kid actually won 5 consecutive rounds. How could it not make people curious and shocked? Therefore, more and more people followed the trend. Today, wherever Chu Luiyue went, the bets would be very lively. Everyone was waiting for her to make a decision. Chu Luiyue rubbed the space between her eyebrows. Actually, it was really a coincidence. On the first day, she deliberately chose those competitions with high odds just to earn some quick money. Who knew that things would turn out like this? I think, Chu Luiyue walked towards one of the stone platforms. Just as she placed her black jade token on it, she heard a loud voice coming from the sky. What are you guys doing? Tomorrow is the beginning of the month assessment. What are you all doing here? Everyone looked up. Chu Luiyue also looked up. Which bastard organized this? Step forward. Everyone quickly put away their black jade tokens and looked at Chu Luiyue in unison. Chu Luiyue, who had just put down the black jade token, was confused. It's all our fault for not informing him in time and guiding him properly. You can deduct these 5,000 points from me. Zhong Sun hurriedly said. He also blamed himself in his heart. Actually, they didn't do it on purpose. Although the academy had set a rule that alchemy gambling was not allowed on the last day of the month, there was actually a limit to it. there could not be more than 2 people. In other words, other than the 2 parties involved in the bet, as long as no one else joined in the bet, it would not be considered a violation. In the end, they gathered over 100 people all of a sudden. It would be strange if Elder Wanjing was not angry. Fortunately, the competition had not officially started, or the punishment would be even worse. He had been with little junior brother for the past 2 days and saw that he kept winning. In a moment of excitement, he forgot about this matter. In the end, he implicated everyone, especially little junior brother who had just arrived and didn't know anything. Senior brother Zhong Sun, thank you for your kind intentions, but since this matter was done by me, I should bear the responsibility. Chu Luiyue shook his head and rejected Zhong Sun's help. Elder Wanjing narrowed his eyes. That's more like it. As he said that, he waved his wrist and took out his green jade token. Whether it was the size or the appearance of the green jade token, it was slightly different from theirs. Obviously, this was something that only the elders would have. Now, line up one by one. At Elder Wanjing's command, everyone could only go forward obediently. They lined up and placed their black jade tokens on the platform one by one. Rays of light flashed one after another. Many people showed a pained expression, but they didn't dare to say anything. Soon, even the 2 who hadn't had a chance to compete walked over and deducted 5,000 each. Zhong Sun glanced at Chu Luiyue hesitantly. Chu Luiyue took the initiative to step forward and placed his black jade token in front of Elder Wanjing. A white ray of light flashed across. The number on the token was reduced significantly. Chu Luiyue's attitude made Elder Wanjing feel much better. That's more like it. You should learn more about the rules of the academy in the future, lest something like this happens again due to ignorance. Chu Luiyue replied obediently. Thank you for your reminder, Elder Wanjing. I'll remember it. That's good. You're a good seedling, so don't waste your time on those messy matters. Be prepared today and perform well tomorrow. A rare smile finally appeared on Elder Wanjing's face. Chu Luiyue nodded. Elder Wanjing waved his hand. You can all disperse. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd responded in unison and dispersed in a hubbub. Chu Luiyue, in the blink of an eye, only the 3 of them were left on the huge mountain. Elder Wanjing gave a few more words of advice and left. Looking at the empty surroundings, Chu Luiyue was speechless, which was rare. Junior brother Chu Yu, don't take it to heart. Elder Wanjing said those words for your own good. He didn't mean to blame you. Zhong Sun saw that there was something wrong with her expression and hurriedly consoled her. It's my fault too, senior brother Zhong Sun, you don't have to blame yourself. Chu Luiyue shook her head. I know that it was Elder Wanjing's good intentions. I just find it a little strange. What's strange? The overall atmosphere of Lingxiao College is very good, and everyone knows what they're doing. Why did they set such a rule? They couldn't gamble at the end of the month. If they really didn't like it, they could have just banned it. Why did they have to set the last day? Oh, you're talking about this. Zhong Sun smiled knowingly. You're new here, so you don't know. At the beginning of every month, everyone will crazily consume points. Therefore, many people will crazily accumulate wealth on the first day, trying to get as many points as possible so that they can gain more advantages. You'll slowly find out the specifics in the future. The Academy set this rule on one hand to prevent people from maliciously competing and robbing others of their points. On the other hand, thinking of something, Zhong Sun's expression changed slightly, and his eyes darkened. Chu Luiyue looked at him. What's wrong with the other hand? Actually, I heard about this too. Zhong Sun hesitated for a moment before saying slowly. This rule has never been set in the Academy before. However, a few years ago, a student took advantage of the opportunity of pill gambling at the end of the month and pocketed 1/3 of the points of the students in the Academy, causing those people to be unable to cultivate normally for several months. Since then, the academy specially added this rule. It was to prevent the same thing from happening again. Chu Luiyue blinked and asked with interest, "Why? Who is that person? So powerful." Digression, Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. She just needs to write a list in advance and wait for the elder in charge of guarding the Medicine Wind Valley to look over it. If you agree, she can use it. If you don't, then. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. Why are there such strange rules? Zhong Sun paused. Because she has only been in the academy for a month, and she has already used all of the best medicinal herbs in the Medicine Wind Valley. Chu Luiyue. I see. In that case, that person was truly a capable person, Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and smiled lazily. Even though he caused such a ruckus, the dean and the elders still couldn't beat him. Zhong Sun looked at him with a strange expression. The seniors are highly respected. How could they lay their hands on a young lady? Chu Luiyue. That's a woman. I didn't say it was a man, did I? Zhong Sun asked. Chu Luiyue smiled. Hee. When I heard that she was so powerful, I subconsciously thought that way. I heard that the dean and the elders really doted on her at that time, especially Elder Huafeng. He even taught her Xian formation step by step. But later on, for some reason, she disappeared inexplicably, and no one mentioned it anymore. Junior brother Chu Yu, I've said so much to you today. It's all for us to talk about it in private. You don't have to take it to heart. Like the others. Senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry. I know what to say and what to do. Chu Luiyue smiled. Zhong Sun heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Yu was a smart person. With a little guidance, he could understand it. Indeed, he didn't need to worry too much. That's good. You don't have to think too much about other things for the time being. You just have to make preparations to deal with the assessment at the beginning of the month tomorrow and successfully become a disciple. I've already told you about the situation of the elders. Do you know what to do now? Chu Luiyue nodded. Zhong Sun was relieved and smiled, then I'll wait for junior brother Chu Yu to amaze the world tomorrow. After that, Chu Luiyue followed Zhong Sun back to his place of residence. Like the other peaks, there were some independent houses and courtyards here. Zhong Sun lived in one of them. Coincidentally, there was an empty courtyard not far from where he was staying, and Chu Luiyue was currently staying there. After bidding farewell to Zhong Sun, Chu Luiyue walked into the house. Tomorrow, I should be able to see the others in the academy. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. On the other side, after Elder Wanjing settled the matters here, he returned to Qingming Square. On the clean square, the white jade stones reflected a faint light. One could vaguely see the flickering light on them. If it was a powerful Xian master, he would be able to see that the light had silently formed several complicated Xian formations that overlapped with each other. Elder Wanjing walked to the front of the Donghuang Bell Tower. Below the Donghuang Bell Tower was a thick and sturdy base. There were a total of 4 doors. Each door faced the north, south, east, and west respectively. On the bronze door, there were lifelike carvings. Elder Wanjing walked to one of the doors, took out his green jade token, and placed it on top of the door. When the door opened, there was a large hall inside. He lifted his foot and entered. If it wasn't for the urgent situation this time, we wouldn't be in such a hurry to call you back. Elder Wanjing walked in and soon heard a familiar voice coming from the front. Everyone is now an important figure in the various sections. For you to take the time to come here, it's really, Elder, you're exaggerating. We're all students of the academy. If the academy is in trouble, we'll naturally do our best. A young man's voice sounded. But I wonder what's the matter that made all the elders so worried. You've been unwilling to tell us these few days. Now that everyone is here, you can finally tell us, right? Elder Wanjing walked in from the darkness. The hall was brightly lit. There were about 20 people here. A few of them were the elders of the Spirit Firmament Academy with the highest status. The remaining 10 or so people looked younger and had an extraordinary aura. They were the reinforcements that the Academy had sent a letter to invite. They were all students from first-rate families in the Academy. At this moment, everyone was sitting on two sides. The atmosphere was a little strange. Hearing the commotion, everyone turned around. Elder Wan Zhang's expression turned serious. I was dealing with something just now. I'm not late, right? Of course not. You're just in time. The young man who spoke just now smiled. The Saint of Yuntian Tower has just arrived. Everyone has been waiting for him, so we haven't said anything yet. There was nothing wrong with this reason, but it still made some people frown slightly. This was because the dean had been in seclusion for a long time. Until now, the dean did not seem to have any intention of coming out of seclusion. It was hard not to be doubtful. But Elder Bo Yen did not give them a chance to continue this topic. This matter was briefly mentioned in the letter I sent to all of you previously, but as for the specifics, it is more appropriate to tell all of you personally. Hearing Elder Bo Yan's serious tone, everyone became even quieter, all of them listening attentively. In fact, the Academy did not only send them a message this time. There were at least 100 people who received the letter. But among them, only these were qualified to sit here. For example, Jiang Jiwan also received the letter, even earlier than Rong Xiu. But at this moment, she could only wait outside. At the same time, in the Mystic Master area of the Academy. In an exquisite courtyard on a mountain peak, a few women were sitting in a circle. Ziyuan, tomorrow is the beginning of the month assessment. I heard that you learned a new martial technique. Are you going to show it this time? A pretty woman asked curiously. Jiang Jiwan did not react, as if she did not hear her. Ziyuan. Ziyuan. After shouting twice, Jiang Jiwan came back to her senses and met their gazes. She reacted for a moment before she understood what had happened and nodded lightly. Yes, I do plan to. With that, her gaze landed on the Donghuang Bell Tower. Because her injuries had not fully recovered, her lips were still a little pale. Looking at her from afar made her look even more pitiful. Unfortunately, other than them, no one else could see it. The women beside her looked at each other. Actually, they did not need to ask to know why Jiang Jiwan was like this. During this period of time, the incident at the Yuntian Tower had already spread. In the world of divine ruins, although the various sects and clans did not have frequent interactions with each other, some important news still spread very quickly. Almost everyone in the academy knew about Jiang Jiwan's feelings for Rong Xiu. In fact, one of the main reasons why she came to Lingxiao College was because of this. The Immortal Water Mausoleum, where Jiang Jiwan was from, was one of the 28 tribes under the Yuntian Tower, and it was the strongest. Therefore, many people thought that she would be the woman standing next to Rong Xiu. But who knew that, looking at Jiang Jiwan's dazed and absent-minded appearance, she probably would not listen to anything they said to her at this moment. Another woman with a sharp chin pursed her lips and suddenly said, Ziyuan, you're not like you at all now. If it were in the past, you would definitely be thinking about how to get a good result in the examination at the beginning of the month. Hearing this, Jiang Jiwan was stunned for a moment and then smiled bitterly. What's the use of fighting over these things now? He won't even look. In the past, she fought for these things only because Rong Xiu was too outstanding when he was in the academy. She thought that if she could be more powerful, then the gap between them would be smaller. As long as she could get close to him, it didn't matter what she did. But now, everything had lost its meaning. The princess consort was already decided. No matter what she thought or did, she could not change this fact. That's why you have to perform well. The woman with the sharp chin looked as if she expected better from Jiang Ji-won. She stretched out her index finger and lightly tapped Jiang Ji-won's forehead. You. After chasing him for so long, are you going to give up just like that? It's especially at times like this that you have to show your excellence. Let everyone, including him, realize how regretful it is that he didn't choose you. A glimmer of light flashed across Jiang Ji-won's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. Outstanding, it seemed that they were still unaware of Shang Guanyu's performance at the Yuntian Tower. If they knew that that woman was indeed stronger than her, they probably wouldn't have said such things. Ziyuan, think about it. You're in the academy, and so is Rongxiu. As long as you're willing, what's the point of that princess consort? Jiang Ji-won was slightly taken aback. What do you mean? Chapter 11:21. Think about it. Your results in the academy are outstanding and dazzling. However, that princess consort doesn't even have the qualifications to become a disciple of the academy. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. It just so happens that Rongxiu will be staying in the academy for a while. As long as you stay by his side for a long time, the scales in his heart will definitely be biased towards you. The sharp-chinned lady revealed a coquettish and smug expression. None of the men can resist such a gentle attack. That's right. Ziyuan, you've liked His Highness for so long. You're not willing to give up just like that, right? Actually, from our point of view, we've always thought that you're the one. Now that someone has snatched away your love, can you really bear it? The few ladies chimed in one after another, and soon, Jiang Ji-won was swayed. She pursed her lips tightly and frowned slightly. Her expression was conflicted and nervous. Actually, she originally wanted to say that Shang Guanyu was actually much more powerful than they had expected. For some reason, the Yuntian Tower didn't seem to have much news about Shanghai Yu. It was as if someone had deliberately blocked the news, so outsiders thought that Shanghai Yu was just an ordinary girl. However, Jiang Ji-won knew very well that, whether it was in terms of appearance, talent, or other aspects, Shanghai Yu was definitely not inferior to her. More importantly, Rongxiu doted on her. He did like that girl. He even did so much for her. However, Jiang Ji-won couldn't bring herself to say these words. She couldn't admit that that girl was more outstanding than her. After a long while, she finally exhaled. I have my own plans. In the room, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged and held her breath. After a while, she raised one hand. A dazzling light appeared on the tip of her finger. Very quickly, this one pearl transformed into several pearls, illuminating her entire palm. Jingshan finger transformed into Jingshan palm. Then, Chu Luiyue slowly clenched her fist. Streams of origin power surged into his fist. It glowed faintly. Chi! Chu Luiyue punched out. Whoosh! Astral winds rose abruptly. In the void, black cracks suddenly appeared. Those were the spatial cracks that had been torn apart by the tyrannical fist wind. At this moment, the surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to be affected by this punch, producing subtle fluctuations. Buzz! Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. Just as the formless wave was about to rush out of the room, a majestic aura suddenly rushed out. Boom! The sound of a violent collision was heard. It was the power of this punch that hit the barrier that had just been set up. After a short but violent tremor, the barrier barely stabilized. Phew! Girl, you're scaring me to death. Taizu appeared in the room at some point. He patted his non-existent heart with a look of lingering fear. If word of this gets out, I think you'll be dealt with by those elders tonight. Chu Luiyue coughed. This. I didn't expect it either. She slowly withdrew her power, then pulled back her fist and looked at it carefully. Her palm was fair and the knuckles were distinct. But if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, no one would have known that this slender hand actually contained such astonishing power. The power of the awakening God fist is actually so strong. This was the first time she had used the awakening God fist. After breaking through to the 7th rank, the force in her body had greatly increased, and her control of the awakening God palm had reached the extreme. She thought that it was time to try to cultivate the awakening God fist. Anyway, this awakening God art was one body. The awakening God fist was transformed from the previous awakening God finger and awakening God palm, so to Chu Luiyue, it didn't consume too much energy. But she really didn't expect that the power of this awakening God fist would be so strong. That punch just now clearly showed signs of mobilizing the heaven and earth energy. This is an earth peak martial skill. What do you think? Taizu blew his beard and stared at her. But to be able to mobilize the heaven and earth energy, it's not a heaven rank martial skill. But the current you has a divine power in your body. Taizu shook his head. This awakening God fist is very profound, and its potential is huge. Just now, you just casually attacked, and you already faintly touched the edge of the heaven rank martial skill. If you cultivate it well, in the future, with your strength, you might really be able to unleash an even stronger power. Chu Luiyue was also secretly shocked, and then suddenly remembered the scene when she saw the awakening God art. That's right. The awakening God art also contained the power of the heavenly Tao. It was just that her level was too low and her strength was too weak, so she had never been able to understand it thoroughly. Later on, she encountered many things one after another, so she temporarily put this matter aside. Now that she thought about it, how could an ordinary earth rank martial skill have such power? Girl, you should cultivate this martial skill well. In the future, it might become your trump card. Taizu said seriously. Chu Luiyue nodded. I'll help you guard. You should comprehend it well. After Taizu finished speaking, he strengthened the power of the barrier to prevent the movements from being detected by the people outside. Thank you, Taizu. Chu Luiyue thanked him and quickly restrained her thoughts. She closed her eyes and recalled the awakening God art. Chu Luiyue had always felt that the awakening God art in her mind was messy about the awakening God fist. But now, unknowingly, Chu Luiyue actually vaguely felt a subtle pattern. She once again circulated the force in her body and raised her right hand. The red force suddenly surged out. It wrapped around her palm. Then, her palm began to slowly turn in the air and slowly clenched into a fist. When her hand formed a fist, her entire palm was already enveloped by a resplendent light. And vaguely, it seemed to have become somewhat transparent. A terrifying aura was emitted from it. Taizu, who was standing at the side, was secretly shocked when he saw this. This awakening God art was indeed comparable to a heaven rank martial skill. This girl's luck. Isn't it too good? Chu Luiyue did not know what Taizu was thinking. She kept recalling the awakening God fist's formula in her mind while constantly pouring the force into her hand. If she opened her eyes at this moment, she would see that as her force poured in, her palm also became more and more transparent. This would almost make people wonder if this hand would become completely transparent after she finished cultivating. As time passed, the force in Chu Luiyue's hand became stronger and stronger. And the vast pressure contained in it was also constantly increasing. Taizu's eyes were fixed on it. For some reason, he also inexplicably became nervous. The dazzling light shone on Chu Luiyue's face, making her originally fair and jade-like face look even clearer and cleaner. At a certain point, Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and her pitch-black eyes reflected a boundless light. She punched out. Crack! Taizu widened his eyes in shock. The barrier he had set up was easily broken by Chu Liuyue's punch. Chapter 11:23. Here it comes. Rong Xiao had already expected this, so when he heard this, there was no displeasure on his face. Instead, he smiled slightly. It seems that the letter from the Mausoleum of Immortal Water has already been sent to Elder Danqing. Elder Danqing frowned. The Mausoleum of Immortal Water didn't say much to this old man. You were the one who did it, so it will naturally spread. Could it be that you still want to hide this matter? His tone couldn't be considered good. The people beside him fell silent for a moment. Although they more or less had the same thought in their hearts, they wouldn't be as straightforward as Elder Danqing, nor would they be as agitated as him. The reason why he was particularly concerned about this matter was because he was Jiang Jiwan's master. His beloved disciple had suffered such grievances and was sad and upset. As her master, he naturally felt unhappy. Even when he looked at Rong Xiao, he felt a bit of an eyesore. The consort selection ceremony was held publicly. Rong Xiao smiled faintly. Everything that happened was witnessed by everyone with their own eyes. Elder Danqing choked. If that's the case, Rong Xiao's actions can't be considered as an intentional cover-up. If Elder Danqing has any questions about what happened that day, I can immediately answer them for you, lest you listen to some unreliable rumors and get angry for no reason. Rong Xiao was still smiling. However, these seemingly polite words were as sharp as a knife. Elder Danqing's expression was even uglier. Are you saying that Ziyuan lied and deliberately slandered you? I didn't say that. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. It's just that the person involved is here. No matter how much outsiders say, it's not as convenient and accurate as me saying it to you personally, isn't it? Outsiders. It was a simple and casual word, but it instantly separated Jiang Ziyuan and drew a clear line between them. Elder Danqing's chest felt stifled. He didn't want to get involved in this matter, but after Jiang Jiwan returned, she looked dejected and sad. He felt very distressed and couldn't help but question Rong Xiao. But Rong Xiao was right. Jiang Jiwan was indeed an outsider to him. Not to mention that Jiang Jiwan's status was not equal to his, Rong Xiao had never shown any interest in Jiang Jiwan. In the end, it was all Jiang Jiwan's wishful thinking. Alright, this is Rong Xiao's own matter. He has always been a wise man of his own mind. Since he has made his decision, we shouldn't interfere. Elder said. Elder also nodded. That's Rong Xiao. If you have time in the future, invite your princess consort to the academy. Rong Xiao had spent quite some time in Lingxiao College. The dean and elders of the college were all seniors to him. It was normal for him to make such a request. Rong Xiao paused for a rare moment, as if he was hesitating. Let's wait for a while. Zhong Sun's expression could not hide his excitement. Because the Azure Cloud leaderboard will appear on the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower soon. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Azure Cloud leaderboard. Digression, it's finally over today. Congratulations. What kind of mooncakes are everyone eating? Chapter 11:24. She wasn't unfamiliar with this name. When she was sparring with Rong Xiao, she had unintentionally blurted out this name. But at that time, she didn't know what the Azure Cloud role was. So it was the Lingxiao College's role, you don't know. Looking at Chu Liuyue's expression, Zhong Sun thought that she had never heard of it, so he patiently explained. The Azure Cloud role is the overall role of Lingxiao College for 10,000 years. It records all the top geniuses that have appeared in the long history of the college. This role is divided into a total of 4 sub-roles. They are martial artist, mystic master, celestial physician, and weapon refiner. And they are also respectively listed on the walls of the East, South, West, and Northeast Bell Tower. As long as you are a student of the college and below the age of 30, you have the chance to rely on your own strength to ascend the azure cloud roll. The day at the beginning of every month is a big day in the college. Some people take the test to become a disciple, some seek treasures, but the most important thing is to ascend the roll. As long as your name is on the azure cloud roll, it will be much better. Even the dean and elders will think highly of you. Chu Luiyue understood. No wonder, what? I was just thinking that no wonder everyone is so excited and attaches so much importance to the azure cloud roll. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms, tapped her chin, and smiled as if she was in deep thought. It was no wonder that she didn't remember anything and could actually say those words when she was sparring with Rongxiu. It seemed that surpassing Rongxiu's ranking on the azure cloud roll was also one of her obsessions in the past. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a little curious and looked at the grand and simple black wall of the East Emperor Bell Tower. The azure cloud roll, I wonder which roll Rongxiu is on and what is his ranking. Creak, a door of the East Emperor Bell Tower opened. Someone walked out from inside. This movement caused the noisy crowd to immediately quiet down. They all knew that the elders were about to come out. But very quickly, everyone discovered that in the group of people that walked out, other than the familiar elder, there were actually more than 10 young men and women. The Dongguang Bell Tower had always only been accessible to the most influential elders of the academy. The sudden appearance of such a group of people naturally raised suspicions. Soon, people recognized some of the people among them. Hey, isn't that the young master of the family way? Why is he here? Young master of family way. Which family way? Who else could it be? Naturally, it's the Qingdupa family way. Hiss, so it's him. It was rumored that this young master Wei was extremely talented and highly regarded by the family Wei. He was almost the most likely successor of the family Wei. However, didn't he finish his studies last year and leave the academy? Why are you here now? Look. The one beside her seemed to be the meteor sect's second miss, Shi Ruier. Why is she here? Haven't you noticed that those are the disciples of first-rate aristocratic families who came from the academy? Someone whispered. Everyone looked and it seemed to be true. Most of them had already left the academy. Only a few of them were still studying in the academy. When these people gathered together, the power behind them was enough to shake the entire Divine Ruins world. It was no wonder that the crowd had such a reaction. Suddenly, the crowd quieted down. The surrounding space seemed to have stagnated for a moment. Chu Luiyue felt the subtle change in the atmosphere and looked up. Because she was standing very far away and at the back, she couldn't see the appearance of the person who walked out clearly. However, when the tall and slender man in white walked out, Chu Luiyue recognized him almost instantly. The sky was clear and the sun was just right. The black Dongguang Bell Tower behind him emitted a faint cold aura. The reliefs on the bronze door were lifelike and dignified, reflecting the white Qingming square. He was the third color that was the brightest and most eye-catching among the two extreme colors. He was dressed in white and looked like an immortal. However, his eyelids were slightly drooping. A faint shadow was cast on his jade-like face. From afar, he looked like a white jade immersed in the dark blue sea. Once he appeared, he easily took away everyone's line of sight. There were many handsome men and beautiful women among the people who walked out. However, compared to him, they instantly lost their flavor and became small and blurry. The crowd fell silent because of his appearance. Then, he seemed to feel something and looked up. Those eyes. Everyone who was touched by this gaze felt their minds tremble. They didn't know what kind of person could have such a pair of unfathomable eyes. They seemed to be able to swallow everything. However, in the blink of an eye, there seemed to be an additional layer of gentleness that could make people recklessly sink into it. Some women looked at him in a daze. Their faces had already turned red. However, he was only looking at one person at the end of his line of sight. Chu Luiyue and his eyes met. Rong Xiao narrowed his eyes. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled slightly. Then, she inexplicably felt a little guilty and looked away. However, she regretted it the moment she looked away. What was she guilty about? It should be Rong Xiao who was guilty. He must have known that she had come to Lingxiao College before, but he deliberately didn't mention it. He even deliberately avoided her when news came from Lingxiao College. In the end, he was the one who lacked confidence. However, when Chu Luiyue looked up again, she saw that there were a few more elders beside Rong Xiao. Chapter 11:25. His kind and dignified gaze quickly swept across the crowd. His low and deep voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. Chu Luiyue only felt as if thunder had exploded beside her ears, and her blood also flowed along with it. It was enough to show how powerful he was. Her heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Lingxiao College indeed lived up to its reputation. Elder Bo Yan's words made many people excited. Especially those new students who had just entered the school within this 1 month. Being able to enter Lingxiao College and cultivate here was something that many people dreamed of. At this moment, standing here and listening to the elder of the school speak, how could they not be excited? Today's assessment, as usual, is divided into 2 parts. Elder Bo Yan placed one hand behind his back. The first part, New Students' Apprenticeship. The new students who entered the school last month, after this period of understanding, should have roughly found the teacher that they most like. As long as you can pass the corresponding assessment today, you can successfully enter the school. If you don't pass the assessment, you will be given another chance to choose another teacher. But if you still don't pass the second time, then you will have to leave the school immediately. You can only come again after 3 months. The crowd was silent. The nervousness in many people's eyes became more obvious. Lingxiao College is indeed strict, Chu Luiyue muttered softly. Even if you passed the first round of assessment by the elders in Fang State City, it didn't mean that you were officially a student of the school from now on. Within the school, there were even more stringent assessments waiting for them. One had to know that the previous assessment standards were already very high, and with this one, who knew how many people would be filtered out? Many geniuses who were revered and envied outside didn't even have the qualifications to enter here. But Lingxiao College had this kind of capital. What they wanted was the existence at the top of the line. Junior brother Chuyu, don't worry, with your talent and strength, you will definitely pass the assessment smoothly. Zhong Sun thought that she was worried about him, so he comforted her. Chu Luiyue smiled in response, and didn't explain further. The second part is the assessment of the students and the change of the green cloud role. This will depend on your own abilities. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that when Elder Bo Yan mentioned the Azure Sky Proclamation, everyone's emotions had clearly become even more agitated. Good. Let's not talk about anything else. The monthly assessment begins. With Elder Bo Yan's command, all the elders went to their positions. Soon, the figures of several elders appeared in the center of the square. All freshmen, step forward. Elder Wanjing shouted in a deep voice. Such a small and thin piece of paper simply couldn't fit them all. Not long after she took a look at it, Chu Luiyue realized that the words on it had disappeared. Then, a few lines of words appeared on the clean paper. This was the content immediately before. For medicinal herbs alone, the words appeared a total of 4 times. The 5th time was the final treatment. After Chu Luiyue roughly read through it, the words disappeared again. This time, there were no other traces. This also meant that even if Chu Luiyue was fully focused from the start to the end, she could only barely finish reading one prescription. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to finish reading it, let alone distinguish the real from the fake. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked at the other one. The same thing happened again. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue was prepared this time. She didn't look as nervous and uneasy as before. In fact, before the last line of words disappeared, she had already retracted her gaze and returned the 2 prescriptions. Many people sighed with regret. It seemed that Chu Yu couldn't make it. Well, how many people in the world could pass such a perverted test? You're not reading anymore. Have you given up? Elder Wanjing took the 2 pieces of paper with an as expected expression. Anyway, he didn't expect anyone to. The first one I read was fake. The second one is real. Chu Luiyue said calmly and seriously. What? Elder Wanjing didn't react immediately. His expression froze for a moment. Chu Luiyue smiled slightly and explained in more detail. Although the blood cinnamon can refresh one's spirit and nourish one's qi, when placed together with the white bamboo fruit, the medicinal effect will be greatly neutralized. Moreover, there are 2 white bamboo fruits, which add a bit of coldness. It's harmful. Also, plum blossom caltrip can't be put in together with the frozen stone. The smell of plum blossom caltrip will greatly affect the thickness of the ice layer on the frozen stone. If you're not careful, the frozen stone will be completely destroyed and lose its medicinal effect. Chu Luiyue's voice was very soft as she spoke tirelessly. The surroundings gradually quieted down. Elder Wanjing's eyes slowly widened. Do you still want to continue? Chu Luiyue asked. After saying so much, anyone who knew a little about celestial physician should be able to understand, right? You. How can you tell? Elder Wanjing's voice was trembling a little. Chu Luiyue chuckled lightly. Naturally, I saw it with my eyes. No, what I mean is, as Elder Wanjing spoke, he saw the sly smile of the young man opposite him. Elves are intelligent and outstanding. Elder Wanjing's heart beat faster. As a celestial physician, he knew too well how precious this young man's talent was. It wasn't that there weren't people who had a photographic memory, but there were very few people who could be like Chu Yu, who could clearly remember the medicinal ingredients, the dosage, and even the order in which they were refined. The most precious thing was that he was very clear about the characteristics of these pills and had mastered them through a comprehensive study. He had a thorough understanding of them. A thought popped up in Elder Wanjing's mind. He finally found a treasure again. There's no need. Elder Wanjing said repeatedly. His square face, which always looked serious, couldn't hide his excitement at this moment. There was a smile at the corner of his eyes. This is enough. You pass. If he didn't accept this, then he would really be punished by the heavens. Back then, he couldn't win against the dean. Now, it was finally his turn. Chu Luiyue blinked. Pass. That's it. Well, it seemed that Elder Wanjing's request wasn't that high after all. If the surrounding people knew what Chu Luiyue was thinking, they would probably gang up on her. You may have it easy, but have you considered others? Do you know how hard we've been living? Okay. Chu Yu. From today onwards, you're my, wait. Before Elder Wanjing could finish, he was suddenly interrupted. He was stunned. He turned around to look at the other celestial physician and felt a little uneasy. Then, he heard one of them say to Chu Luiyue with a smile. Chu Yu, I wonder if you're interested in joining us. Elder Wanjing snorted. They were here to snatch him. Without a doubt, she put a lot of pressure on the rest of the people. Everyone was a celestial physician. They were especially sensitive in this aspect. They could see that Chu Luiyue was indeed very talented in this aspect. If it were them, it would be difficult for them to even memorize the contents of the 2 prescriptions. Not to mention that she could accurately determine the authenticity of the prescriptions and even point out the problems in them. For a moment, there were many people who were envious and jealous. After Chu Luiyue passed the test, she took a step back and stood aside, giving her position to the others. Next! An elder shouted. The rest of the people looked at each other. The girl was the first to step forward. I'll do it. Chu Luiyue glanced at the girl. She seemed to be in her 20s. Her skin was fair, her nose was straight, and her eyes were watery. However, there was a hint of arrogance in her eyes. It made her look cold and distant. She walked straight to Elder Wanzheng. Elder Wanzheng, I would also like to be your disciple. She turned her gaze slightly and looked at Chu Luiyue with a hint of provocation. Chu Luiyue chuckled. The students of Lingxiao College were really competitive. You still have a second chance. Wu Xian was shocked. Only then did she remember that Elder Bo Yan had mentioned before that everyone only had 2 chances to be apprenticed. If the first time didn't work, there was always a second time. However, if he failed twice, he would be chased out and unable to officially become a student of the academy. She bit her lip and suddenly looked at Chu Luiyue. Elder Wanzheng, this student has something to ask. Was the prescription that Chu looked at the same level as mine? If it wasn't lower level and simpler than hers, how could it be so easy? Chu Yu's prescription used a total of 198 types of herbs. Yours is 181. Elder Wanzheng glanced at her and smiled. Any other questions? Wu Xian's face turned red and white. No. No more. With that, she bit her lip and retreated to the side. There seemed to be tears in her eyes. She looked at Chu Luiyue with a complicated gaze. This young man, is he really so much stronger than me? However, Chu Luiyue didn't take her seriously. Because at this moment, that familiar gaze was still on her. She resisted the urge to look up. Next. The celestial physician's side was relatively quiet, but the Xian master and martial artist's side was much more lively. Some succeeded, some failed. Some were happy, some were disappointed. However, this kind of situation happened every month, so the older students were already used to it. Chu Luiyue glanced out of the corner of his eye and happened to see that Lin Qifei seemed to have passed the assessment. His talent was stronger than what he had displayed, so it was naturally not a problem for him to get into Lingxiao College. After that, Luo Yanming also successfully passed. Chu Luiyue glanced at them and thought that Luo Shishir and Zhuxing shouldn't have any problems. The new student assessment progressed very quickly. The celestial physician's side was the first to finish. Including Chu Luiyue, a total of 4 of the 6 people passed the test. As for the remaining 2, they failed regretfully. The elimination rate for the Xian master's side was almost a quarter. Looking at the dejected young faces, Chu Luiyue's brows twitched slightly. Lingxiao College's threshold was indeed extremely high. However, this atmosphere of joy and sadness quickly dissipated. This was because, after the first part of the new student assessment ended, even more people were eagerly waiting for the azure cloud roll. Countless eyes looked at the Donghuang Bell Tower. Elder Bo Yan laughed out loud. Looks like you've all waited anxiously. Fine, I'll release the roll now. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve. The Donghuang bell rang 3 times in a row. Dong! 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 In the next moment, thousands of rays of light flew out, shining brilliantly. Countless rays of light converged on the iron-black wall, forming neatly arranged names. Chu Luiyue looked up. She was looking at the celestial physician roll. A familiar name suddenly appeared. Digression, I'm going out for a whole day today, so I'm very tired. Chapter 1129. Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue was stunned when she saw the familiar name at the top of the list. Rongxiu is actually on the celestial physician list. And he's so close to the top. How? How could he be number one? Chu Luiyue muttered softly. Elder Wanzheng looked up and narrowed his eyes when he heard her voice. You mean Rongxiu? He's not number one. Chu Luiyue turned to look at him. Rongxiu is number two. There's another person above him. Another person. Chu Luiyue looked up again, but she didn't see another name above Rongxiu. Number one's name has been erased. Elder Wanzheng's tone was a little strange. Why is that? Chu Luiyue couldn't figure it out. Since everyone wanted to be on the list, why would the number one's name be erased? That's the dean's doing. After the number one's name was placed on the list, it disappeared not long after. Many new students thought that Rongxiu was number one, but that wasn't the case. Elder Wanzheng lifted his chin. Look carefully. The number one position is engraved with the dean's seal. Chu Luiyue took a closer look. Indeed, there seemed to be a faint layer of pressure at the top. But why would the dean do that? Chu Luiyue wanted to say something, but stopped. A top figure like him should have his own considerations. She guessed that it would be a waste of time to ask Elder Wanzheng. But this is something that happened a few years ago. Not many people in the academy talk about it now, so not many people know about it. Even if they knew that something was wrong with the list, the elders and students tacitly chose to keep quiet. Elder Wanzheng suddenly sighed softly. If he hadn't accepted Chu Luiyue as his disciple, he wouldn't have mentioned this matter. After all, some things were in the past. It's fine as long as you know about it. There's no need to dwell on it. Now, it's not wrong to say that Rongxiu is the celestial physician on the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Chu Yu, you have to cultivate more in the future and strive to be on the list as soon as possible. Elder smiled and patted Chu Luiyue's shoulder. His usually solemn square face was surprisingly kind at this moment. He looked at Chu Luiyue with sparkling eyes, as if he had high expectations of her. A faint sense of uneasiness grew in her heart. Master, what do you mean? Elder Wanzheng chuckled. Don't worry. I won't ask you to be on the list now. I'll give you 3 months. The rankings looked at the last name. There was the last name first. There were only 100 names on the proclamation of Azure Clouds, and the last name seemed to be a man's name, Bian Wenhao. That Bian Wenhao, how strong is he now? Chu Luiyue asked in a low voice. Not strong. That kid is now at the peak of the 9th rank. As long as you reach the peak of the 9th rank, with your spiritual energy as a celestial physician, you'll definitely surpass him. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Elder Wanzheng, you seem to have misunderstood me. No matter how talented I am, isn't it a little too much for you to expect me to break through from the 8th rank to the 9th rank in 3 months? Besides, I just broke through to the 8th rank at the Heavenly Cave Cliff. Is there a problem? Elder Wanzheng looked at her lovingly. Do you want me to cheer you on? Chu Luiyue replied. I'll definitely do my best. That's my good disciple. Only then did Elder Wanzheng heave a sigh of relief. It was quite difficult to find another genius like that scourge. Otherwise, he wouldn't have failed to find one in the past few years. Now, he finally had Chu Yu. With more effort, he should also be a promising talent. Elder Wanzheng was comfortable, but Chu Luiyue was uncomfortable. She glanced at the Qing Yun ranking again. The last 100th place was at the peak of the 9th rank. Then, what about Rongxiu? She no longer had any interest in finding that man and asking him about it. The gap was too big. What else was there to ask? Looking at the unfamiliar names on the ranking, Chu Luiyue let out a long breath. She still had a lot to learn in Lingxiao College. Other than the celestial physician ranking, the other 3 rankings had also been hung up. The mystic masters and martial artists had gathered the most people, but the blacksmiths were still quiet. Other than an elder standing there symbolically, there wasn't even anyone looking at the ranking. The older students were used to it, but the new students were busy with themselves, so it was very empty for a while. Chu Luiyue originally wanted to take a look at the 2 rankings, but unfortunately, it was too crowded and lively. She thought for a moment and walked over to the blacksmiths. Unlike the celestial physician ranking, there was only a short section on the blacksmith's ranking. This meant that there were less than 100 people on it. Chu Luiyue looked at the name at the top, and her pupils constricted. It was actually Rongxiu too. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled. She paused and walked back a few steps. From where she was standing, she could see the 2 rankings. It was obvious that Rongxiu's name on the celestial physician ranking was obviously 1 level lower than his name on the blacksmith's ranking. Rongxiu was the true number 1 on the blacksmith's ranking. Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but look at Rongxiu, who was standing on the Donghuang Bell Tower. This man, he actually hid so much. It didn't take a genius to figure out exactly how formidable his strength was since he was able to obtain such a ranking on the Ascension rankings. Rongxiu looked down. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and walked toward the ranking. The crowd was noisy. So this is the Qing Yun ranking. Sigh, I finally made it last month, but I didn't make any breakthroughs this month. I'm afraid I'll be squeezed down again. I heard that those who have completely broken through to the divine level can only make it into the top 20. I really don't know what kind of monsters are those who are ranked in front. I heard that Senior Rongxiu has been on the ranking for many years, and no one has broken through to this day. He's really amazing. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled slightly. As expected, Rongxiu's name was still in the first place. However, there was a small blank space under his name. Thinking of what Elder Wanjing said just now, she suddenly understood something. Some of the new students were still asking questions. The first place is Senior Rongxiu, then what's the matter with the second place? That's right. Why is there a blank space out of nowhere? Shoot, hearing this, the senior students hurriedly signaled for them to be quiet. The person who occupies the second place is a special student in the academy. His name is not to be mentioned. It's fine if you don't understand since you're new here, but don't talk about this in the future. Many of the new students were confused. Why is that? There's no reason. In short, from now on, you will abide by this rule. You came to the academy to improve your own cultivation. Other people's matters have nothing to do with you, understand? Thank you for your teachings, senior brother. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she went to look at the Xian master ranking. Rongxiu's name was in second place. His name had been erased, just like the celestial physician ranking. Chapter 1130. A strange feeling arose in Chu Luiyue's heart. There were a total of 4 rankings on the Azure Cloud roll. Rongxiu occupied the first place on the weapon refiner and martial artist rankings. That mysterious student occupied the first place on the other 2 rankings, celestial physician and mystic master. To be able to stand up to Rongxiu, one didn't need to think to know that the person must be very formidable. But such a powerful student should be doted on by the dean and elders. Why would they deliberately erase that person's name? From the way Elder Bo Yan and the others treated Rongxiu, it could be seen that they should be especially tolerant and gentle towards students with outstanding talent and strength. But only this person, Chu Luiwei, recalled what she heard from Zhong Sun. Could it be that the person whose name was erased was actually the dean's disciple? Chu Luiwei sized up the azure cloud roll and was slightly stunned. She almost forgot one thing. Her name didn't seem to be on the azure cloud roll. Chu Luiwei wasn't thinking of her current name, Chu Yu, but her previous name in Lingxiao College. Since she once wanted to surpass Rong Xiu's name on the azure cloud roll, then she should have the strength back then. At the very least, she should be on the azure cloud roll, right? But no. Chu Luiwei looked back and forth several times, but she didn't see her name. Then, maybe she didn't use her real name back then. Chu Luiwei's gaze lingered on the blank space where the name was erased on the azure cloud roll for a while. A bold and absurd thought surged in her mind, but she quickly suppressed it. Not to mention other things, just in the martial artist role alone, one must be a god-level powerhouse to enter the top 20. But she wasn't. She wasn't at her peak either. In that case, this conjecture seemed completely nonsensical. At this moment, a loud voice came from the crowd. Student Li Ziming challenges the 100th on the azure cloud roll, Sun Shao. Chu Luiwei looked in the direction of the voice. The one who spoke was a well-built, dark-skinned young man. His face was filled with nervousness and apprehension, but he could not hide the excitement in his eyes. Being able to ascend the ascension rankings was the greatest affirmation of a student's strength. There were a lot of people who had set this as their goal. They would constantly work hard and cultivate diligently, hoping that they would one day be able to make it onto the rankings. Of course, even those who were on the list did not dare to relax in the slightest. Because they were at risk of being squeezed out at any time. Just like now, once someone was on the list, at the beginning of every month, someone would issue a challenge to them. After all, so long as there weren't any special circumstances, the people on the ascension rankings couldn't refuse the challenge at the beginning of the month. Otherwise, it would be seen as admitting defeat. However, when he saw the serious expression on the young man's face, Elder Wanjing realized that he wasn't joking. He seems to really want to earn points. You've just come to the academy. You'll have plenty of time to earn points in the future. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm just asking for your opinion. Before Elder Wanjing could finish his words, he saw the young man smiling slightly. Master, the academy only stipulates that we can't gamble at the end of the month. There's no rule about the beginning of the month, right? Elder Wanjing's eyelids twitched. I heard that every time it's this time, there will be some people who will start betting. To be honest, there are already a few people who came to ask for my opinion today. Chu Luiwei looked troubled. Tell me, should I say it or not? I'll give you the points later. Elder Wanjing couldn't help but shout. Why didn't I notice that this kid knows how to play such a trick? He looks obedient and sensible, but now it seems that he's different from what I expected. Chu Luiwei then smiled in satisfaction. Her eyes curved into crescents, and her starry eyes sparkled. I knew Master is the best. However, this smile made Elder Wanjing's eyelids twitch violently. Why do I feel like I've been cheated? And this feeling is strangely familiar. However, before he could think about it carefully, Chu Luiwei had already turned her head to look at the arena. She crossed her arms and gently rubbed her chin with one hand as if she was deep in thought. I think this round should be, under the sunlight, the young man's delicate face looked innocent and harmless. When he was thinking seriously, he was exceptionally quiet and there was a special aura around him. Elder Wanjing thought to himself that he was overthinking. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the sky. Rong Xiu. Do you dare to fight? Chapter 1131. His voice was like a sudden clap of thunder. It was earth-shattering. Everyone looked up in shock when they heard that. Someone wanted to challenge Rong Xiu. When they saw who it was, the elders all revealed a look of understanding. It was him, then it wasn't strange anymore. Some of the older students recognized him and exclaimed, "Yin Shuli. He's out of seclusion." Many of them came back to their senses. Yin Shuli. The one who ranked third on the warrior leaderboard. That's him. He hasn't come out for a long time. I heard that he's been cultivating in seclusion. I didn't expect him to appear today. What's so strange about that? Didn't you hear that he's here to challenge Rongshou? I'm afraid there's going to be a good show. Yin Shuli stood in the air with a silver spear in his hand. On the silver spear, there were several blue lines intertwined and gathered at the tip, forming a sharp blue spearhead. From afar, it looked like a silver-blue dragon with a heavy aura. He was dressed in black, and his figure was tall and straight. His face was angular and his skin was wheat-colored. His pair of long and narrow eyes were as sharp as blades. If one looked into his eyes, his gaze seemed to be able to pierce through one's heart and look into the depths of one's heart. At that moment, his gaze was fixed on Rongshou, who was standing on the Donghuang Bell Tower. Although he was expressionless, there was an undisguised fighting spirit in the depths of his eyes. Everyone could feel that he was eager to fight with Rongshou. The aura on his body seemed to be sharper than the silver spear. Some people were born to fight. Yin Shuli was obviously such a person. Everything that was present was not important to him. At that moment, there was only one thought in his mind: defeat Rongshou. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Rongshou. Curiosity, surprise, anticipation, nervousness. Obviously, everyone wanted to see Rongshou's reaction. Besides that, they wanted to witness exactly how strong Rongshou, who was ranked at the top of the Ascension rankings, was. One had to know that Rongshou had not been in the academy for many years. Now that he had suddenly appeared, everyone naturally wanted to see for themselves if he was as powerful as the rumors said. However, Elder Bo Yen was the first to speak. "Shuli, Rongshou came back this time because he has something else to deal with." "It's not, I accept your challenge." Before Elder Bo Yen could finish his words, he was interrupted by Rongshou. On his noble and enchanting face, there was a carefree expression, and the corners of his eyes and brows seemed to hold a faint smile, as if he didn't take this matter to heart. Elder Bo Yen hesitated for a moment. "Rongshou, aren't you busy?" "It won't take long," Rongshou said with a faint smile. How arrogant! Such a thought flashed through everyone's minds. He sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly covered his mouth. At the same time, he looked at Elder Bo Yen and the others with a panicked expression. Perhaps it was because they were still a distance away, or perhaps the elders weren't paying attention, but they didn't seem to have any reaction. Phew, the young man let out a long sigh, but there was still a lingering fear in his heart. He actually forgot about this taboo. "Humph, you can't say that," Wei Shiping suddenly said coldly and broke the dead silence. "I heard that Rongshou has been very busy these few years. Even the time he spent in the Yuntian Tower was very short. I don't know what he did, but I don't think he's focused on cultivation. On the other hand, Yin Shuli has been diligently cultivating. There might be a gap between the two of them before, but now, it's still unknown who's stronger." Digression: after running around outside for a whole day yesterday, he was completely crippled. Update continues at 6 p.m. Chapter 1132. Rongshou's talent was strong. A few years ago in the academy, he had always been stronger than them. However, if he neglected his cultivation, it would be impossible for him to regain his past glory after a few years, right? Other things aside, Yin Shuli was a lunatic when it came to fighting. With his current strength, he might really win against Rongshou. When the others heard this, they all had different expressions. They didn't say anything more and looked at the two people in the sky who were facing each other in the distance. Yin Shuli looked at Rongshou's empty hands and frowned. His originally expressionless face seemed even sharper. "Where's your yuan instrument?" Rong Xiao shook his head. "I don't need those." Yin Shuli's expression turned cold. "Looks like you're very confident in yourself." "Rong Xiao, I've been cultivating hard for the past 3 years just for this day. Today, I'll give it my all. I'll defeat you." A few years ago, after losing to Rong Xiao several times, Yin Shuli developed a strong fighting spirit against Rong Xiao. He had been waiting for an opportunity to turn the tables. However, Rong Xiao left the academy not long after that and did not come back for the past 3 years. This caused him to not have a chance to fight Rong Xiao officially. This time, after knowing that Rong Xiao had returned, he immediately rushed over. Rong Xiao smiled faintly. "Please." Yin Shuli narrowed his eyes and the aura around him surged. "A god-level expert." Exclamations came from the crowd. Judging by this aura, he must have broken through the demigod level and become a supreme god. Once a supreme god becomes a supreme god. But he's only 25 years old now, right? As expected of the martial artist ranked 3rd on the Green Cloud leaderboard. I wonder how powerful Rong Xiao is now. I heard that when he left the academy 3 years ago, he was already a supreme god. Now, the discussion from below entered Yin Shuli's ears and made him even more eager to fight. Whoosh! With a wave of his arm, the silver spear in his hand suddenly pierced forward. Obsidian lightning spear. Chi! When he poured his origin power into the silver spear, the dark blue lines on the spear's body seemed to come alive and began to dance wildly. A terrifying pressure spread out in all directions with him as the center. The sound of thunder rang out. Yin Shuli's figure flashed, and he had already charged in front of Rong Xiao in a blink of an eye. A spear thrust forward. No one could even see how he moved. Teleport, Chu Luyuan narrowed his eyes. Above rank 9 warriors were demigods, and above demigods were high gods. Only when a cultivator broke through to the high god level would they be considered a true god level expert. Only when a cultivator reached this level would they be able to teleport without any external help. The distance of teleportation was different depending on the strength of each person. In a real battle, this move was very crucial. However, Rong Xiao did not seem to be worried about this situation. In fact, when Yin Shuli appeared 3 steps away from him, his expression was still as calm as before. It was as if he had expected this. Chu Liuyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. At this moment, Rong Xiao finally moved. He raised his right hand, reached forward, and grabbed the tip of the spear. Ah! Cries of surprise could be heard from the crowd. Many of the ladies looked nervous. Wei Shiping sneered. Pretentious fool. Yin Shuli's obsidian lightning spear was a true high-grade divine weapon. Rong Xiao's futile attempt to block it with his physical body was simply a pipe dream. People who were too arrogant would always pay the price for their arrogance. However, at this moment, Yin Shuli's expression suddenly changed. This was because he realized that the invincible obsidian lightning spear was easily blocked by Rong Xiao and could not move forward. Even the sharp tip of the spear did not hurt Rong Xiao. Both sides were in a stalemate. Yin Shuli's expression turned serious as he poured more force into the obsidian lightning spear. However, it still did not move an inch. At this moment, the crowd below finally realized that something was wrong. Logically speaking, Rong Xiao's hand should have been pierced through, but now, Yin Shuli suddenly thought of something and widened his eyes as he looked at Rong Xiao in disbelief. You've already cultivated to the level of a god, crack. Before he could finish his sentence, Rong Xiao's hand suddenly clenched. The faint blue light flickered, but it did not seem to affect Rong Xiao at all. He decisively pulled and whipped out. Just like that, the obsidian lightning spear was released from Yin Shuli's control. Swoosh! Before the crowd could see it clearly, they could only hear the sharp sound of wind breaking. The next moment, the scene in the sky shocked them. The obsidian lightning spear had somehow fallen into Rongxiu's hands. The terrifyingly sharp tip of the spear was pointed at Yin Shuli's chest. It was as if he could pierce Yin Shuli's heart if he moved an inch closer. The entire place was silent. Everyone was stunned as they watched the scene unfold before them. They did not know how to react. Rongxiu had taken Yin Shuli's yuan instrument and turned the tables to attack, forcing Yin Shuli to a dead end. He only used one move. The crowd did not even know if this was considered one move. They did not even see Rongxiu unleash his force. All they saw was a blur, and the two of them were completely reversed. Rongxiu lifted his chin slightly, his face still wearing the same casual smile. However, at this moment, there was an inexplicable pressure in the crowd's eyes. "Do you want me to continue?" Rongxiu's thin lips moved slightly as he said calmly. Yin Shuli's body tensed up. He could even feel that the cold and sharp tip of the spear had already pierced through his clothes and was firmly pressed against his chest. A sharp pain came from above. He did not need to look down to know that his chest was bleeding. If it went deeper, he would be dead on the spot. Looking at those unfathomable eyes, Yin Shuli did not doubt that Rongxiu was capable of doing such a thing. He pursed his lips, his face pale. After a while, he let out a long sigh. "I admit defeat." Whoosh, the crowd below was in an uproar. He admitted defeat. Yin Shuli admitted defeat just like that. According to his combative nature, it was extremely difficult for him to admit defeat so easily. At the same time, it also meant that he was helpless against Rongxiu's counterattack. His yuan instrument had been taken away, and it was pressed against his chest. Anyone would have to admit defeat, right? Everything happened too quickly. Everyone was looking forward to an exciting fight, but Rongxiu did not give them such a chance. The crowd standing on the Donghuang Bell Tower was also shocked. Rongxiu has actually become so strong. Wei Shiping, didn't you just say that Yin Shuli could defeat Rongxiu? What do you think now? The surrounding people looked at Wei Shiping at the same time. Who knew? After seeing it with my own eyes, I realized that it was all true. It is a pity that senior brother Rongxiu has not been in the academy for the past few years. It is difficult to even meet him. This time, he should not be staying for too long. For such a man, I wonder what kind of woman would be able to enter his eyes. Do you still need to ask? Of course, it is Jiang Jiwan. The immortal water mausoleum where she is from is the strongest tribe under the Yuntian Tower. Moreover, the two of them have known each other for a long time. They can be considered childhood sweethearts. Don't you know? Not long ago, senior brother Rongxiu just got married to a princess. What? I heard that the princess is an outsider. Anyway, Jiang Jiwan has nothing to do with it, many of the girls were discussing in low voices. There were also some who were quietly searching for Jiang Jiwan's figure. Those gazes landed on Jiang Jiwan, making her feel uneasy. She did not know how much effort she had to expend to resist the urge to turn around and run away. When she came to the academy, Rongxiu had coincidentally left the academy. The two of them did not spend time together at the academy. But in reality, other than the freshmen who had just arrived, more than half of Lingxiao College's students knew that she liked Rongxiu. Among them, there were some who added fuel to the fire. Of course, she also did it on purpose. Jiang Jiwan was beautiful and had outstanding talent. Naturally, she was like the moon surrounded by stars in the academy. Many of her seniors and juniors had a good impression of her and had even pursued her passionately. But they were all rejected by Jiang Jiwan. At first, no one knew why she did so. But later on, there was news that although she was born in the Immortal Water Mausoleum, she was favored by the Yuntian Tower's tribe leader. Therefore, she grew up there. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was the spoiled eldest daughter of the Yuntian Tower. Because of this, everyone naturally associated her with Rongxiu. Some people came to her in private to ask about it. Jiang Jiwan did not admit it, but she did not deny it either. Thus, gradually, everyone knew about this matter. Many people silently agreed that Jiang Jiwan and Rongxiu would be together. But who would have thought that in the end, another woman would suddenly appear and become Rongxiu's princess consort? Now, there were those who sympathized with Jiang Jiwan, those who mocked her, and those who wanted to see her make a fool of herself. How could Jiang Jiwan not know that? So at this moment, those eyes and comments made her feel even more uncomfortable. She wanted to leave, but she could not bear to. So, she could only stand there and suffer. Chu Luiyue also heard such comments. He raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling a little strange. Rongxiu could be considered a celebrity in Lingxiao College. Chu Yu. Chu Yu. Chapter 1135. Bo Yan, you think so too? Just then, Elder Wensi appeared out of nowhere and chuckled as he reminded them proudly. That child, I recruited him. When I saw him a few days ago, I felt that his talent was amazing and he was obedient. He would definitely do well in the future. What do you think? My eyes are good, right? Sigh, the only pity is that this child went to cultivate celestial physician. If he was a martial artist, TSK, Elder Wensi was happy and regretful at the same time. He was happy that such an outstanding new student was recruited by him. It was a pity that this child could not cultivate with him. Elder Wanzheng, that old bastard, had taken advantage of him for nothing. Wanzheng owes me a big favor this time. Elder Wensi said confidently. Rongxiu looked at him with a strange expression. It was not certain who owed who. Didn't you also take in a few students? One of them seems to be a direct descendant of Mingsha Si's Luo family. Elder Bo Yan smiled. Isn't that enough? Elder Wensi coughed. Isn't this, the more the better? The more the better. Rongxiu looked down again before slowly bidding farewell to everyone. Elder Bo Yan, I still need to go back and prepare for the matter we talked about earlier, so I won't stay any longer. The elders were not surprised that Rongxiu wanted to leave. It was already rare that he was willing to show up. Moreover, he had just fought with Yin Shuli. All right. I'll send someone, thank you for your kindness, Elder Bo Yan, but there's no need for that for now. Rongxiu smiled. Although I haven't returned for a few years, this student is still very familiar with the academy. It was rare for Elder Bo Yan to hear him refer to himself like this. He felt rather emotional and nodded. All right, then. I'll leave it to you. Rongxiu left quickly. Seeing his figure disappear, many people were disappointed. However, they also knew that Rongxiu was no longer in the academy. It was already very difficult to meet him, so they didn't dare to ask for more. Wei Shiping and the others also left not long after he left. Only the elders were left on the Donghuang Bell Tower. Meanwhile, the competition on the Qingming Square was still in full swing. As the competition progressed, the rankings on the Ascension rankings gradually changed as well. Those who successfully made it onto the list naturally cheered, while those who unfortunately failed were disappointed. The competition for the rankings was even more intense. Everyone was a genius from all over the world. Except for a few monstrous existences, most people's talents were actually about the same. Under such circumstances, the competition between the strong and the weak would be very intense. At this moment, Chu Luiyue finally found out that the higher one's ranking was on the ascension rankings, the longer one stayed on the rankings, and the more points one possessed. As for those who dominated the rankings, there was no need to even mention them. She thought about how she had painstakingly earned more than 20,000 points, and in the blink of an eye, 5,000 points were deducted. Chu Luiyue was very heartbroken. The fastest way to earn points was to actually get onto the ascension rankings. However, even if she was the celestial physician that she was most confident in, the 100th place was still at the peak of the 9th grade. If she wanted to defeat him, she had to at least be able to refine a pill of the same grade. Chu Luiyue was a little troubled. Chu Yu, what are you thinking about? Luo Shishir asked. Chu Luiyue gently rubbed her chin with one hand. I'm thinking. How to get onto the ascension rankings. Luo Shishir couldn't help but laugh out loud. You're already thinking about this problem. Isn't it? A little early. I'm thinking that it's better to be a little stronger and have a little more confidence to succeed in one go. What do you think? These words were already rather tactful, as if she didn't want to dampen Chu Luiyue's enthusiasm. She added another sentence. According to your talent, it shouldn't take long, right? Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered as she smiled. You're right. This kind of thing can't be rushed. Since it was so difficult to get onto the celestial physician ranking, the competition for the other two rankings would only be even more intense. Among these rankings, only the weapon refiner ranking with less than 100 people would have the least competition, right? Weapon refiner. Chu Luiyue's eyes suddenly lit up as she looked towards the north. If she could display her talent as a weapon refiner, then she might be able to get onto the rankings directly. Thinking about it carefully, she had actually forged yuan tools before. Back then, the cloud sky copper sword that Chang Wanzhou used was sharpened by her. Although it wasn't considered a complete weapon refiner, but maybe she could really give it a try. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue walked towards the direction of the weapon refiner. Hearing Chu Luiyue's footsteps, Elder Renran, who was standing under the weapon refiner ranking drowsily, opened one of his eyes. Oh, it's still that freshman who was casually strolling around. I think he's the one who became Wan Zhang's disciple. Then, Elder Renran saw the young man walking straight towards him and standing in front of him. Greetings, Elder. Elder Renran opened his second eye and said lazily, what are you doing? If an ordinary person saw him for the first time, they would definitely think that he was arrogant and rude. But in fact, those who were familiar with Elder Renran, or rather, those who were familiar with the temperament of the weapon refiners, would know that this was already a very polite situation. And it was still because of Elder Wanzhang. Chu Luiyue didn't mind. Chapter 1136. As Elder Renran spoke, he was about to close his eyes again. Elder, this student has something to ask of you. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised by his words, but she didn't give up immediately. After pondering for a moment, she still spoke. She wasn't a demigod. But she had a strand of divine power in her body. More importantly, she had already forged the cloud sky copper sword a long time ago. Although the Tianlei at that time was attracted by the Taizu, but she was indeed the one who cleaned up the Tianlei later on. Elder Renran opened his eyes and looked at her lazily. Speak. If a person's strength hasn't reached the demigod level, then is there really no way to determine if he has talent in refining? Why are you so obsessed with this? Elder Renran laughed and looked at her as if he was looking at an ignorant child who was throwing a tantrum. He pointed to the side. If you really want to be on the Qingyun leaderboard, go back and study alchemy properly. Perhaps you can get there faster. You should give up on being a refiner. Elder Renran didn't feel that it was useful to say so much to a young man who had just reached the 7th rank. In his opinion, Chu Luiyue was acting like this because of novelty. But in reality, How could it be so easy to be a refiner? Many cultivators who had reached the demigod level couldn't even touch the edge of being a refiner, let alone a child like this. Chu Luiyue paused. I heard that refiners use the power of Tianlei to forge yuan tools. If this student can do it, can I also be considered a refiner? Of course, what? Elder Ren choked and looked at Chu Luiyue with a bewildered expression. What did you just say? You can trigger Tianlei to forge yuan tools. Chu Luiyue blinked and nodded slightly. Impossible. This is impossible. Unless, Elder Ren suddenly paused. You have contracted a divine beast. To Elder Ren, there was only one possibility to be able to trigger Tianlei without reaching the demigod level. It meant that a cultivator had contracted a divine beast. When a human formed a contract with a divine beast, a wisp of heavenly energy that originally belonged to the divine beast would enter the cultivator's body. Relying on this, it was not impossible to trigger the heavenly lightning. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed as he nodded. Yes. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was so insistent, Elder Ren had no other choice but to mutter, if that's the case, I can give it a try. However, if you get hurt later, this old man won't be responsible. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Thank you, Elder. Chu Yu, what are you doing? Luo Shishi walked over, her eyes filled with confusion. You want to enter the weapon refiner ranking. Why did he come to the blacksmith ranking instead of the celestial physician ranking? Chu Luiyue nodded with an indifferent expression. Compared to all living things in the world, divine beasts were the most favored existence by the heavens. The divine power that Chu Luiyue took contained a trace of the heavenly path's aura. Although it was weak, perhaps because Taizu in the northern underworld was already a god-level expert when he left this power behind, it was more or less comparable to the heavenly path's power left behind by a demigod like Taizu. So, in summary, Chu Luiyue had 4 types of heavenly path's power in her body. If she wanted to trigger Tianlei, this should be enough. However, for safety's sake, Chu Luiyue still chose to use the heavenly path's power that she had obtained through the contract with Dumpling. A vigorous aura spread out from Chu Luiyue's dantian, and then surged toward her hands. Buzz! The illusion god Pearl seemed to have sensed something, and let out a soft sound. At the same time, ripples appeared on its surface. The ripples gradually spread inwards. There seemed to be something surging inside the translucent green jade. Seeing this, Elder Ren, who was originally dismissive of Chu Luiyue, straightened his back subconsciously, and the laziness in his eyes disappeared. Soon, a faint blue Tianlei flashed. Crack! Although this was a miniature version, because it was the real Tianlei, its might was still not to be underestimated. Elder Ren's face lit up. You're really, however, before he could finish his sentence, the Tianlei that had just been summoned seemed to have encountered something terrifying, and with a whoosh, it ran back and quickly disappeared. Chu Luiyue was confused. Chu Luiyue had performed very well in the celestial physician's examination. Some people were envious, and some were jealous. In the eyes of those people, her current behavior was nothing more than a meaningless show of strength. What are you talking about? Luo Shishi frowned and turned back to reprimand them. She was a noble lady carefully nurtured by an aristocratic family. Although she had a gentle temper, when she was angry, the invisible aura on her body was enough to shock people. Those students who were swept by her gaze shut their mouths. Even if they were unhappy, Luo Shishi was still a member of the Luo family, and they didn't dare to offend her. Moreover, there were several people in the Luo family, such as Luo Yanlin, who were quite reputable in the college. There was really no need to provoke them. Miss Luo, don't be angry over these trivial matters. Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue turned around and smiled slightly. Luo Shishi pursed her lips. They said that about you. Actually, they're not wrong. I don't seem to have any talent in this area. Chu Luiyue said as she returned the illusion god pearl. I don't seem to be compatible with this thing. This scene was actually not unfamiliar to her. It seemed to be the same when she was forging the cloud sky copper sword. It was just that the situation back then was much more intense and real than now. Although she felt that she could forcefully capture Tianlei back, she gave up considering that there were so many people watching. Elder Ren took the illusion god pearl and looked at it carefully. Finally, he looked at Chu Luiyue with a complicated gaze. What a pity. Logically speaking, you're not completely without talent as a weapon refiner, but, however, it didn't seem to be enough, or there were other problems. In short, Chu failed to summon Tianlei. This test could only be considered a failure. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to be disappointed and only smiled faintly. I know. Sorry to trouble you. With that, she left without any reluctance. Sigh, Luo Shishi hurriedly followed and carefully looked at her expression, as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. Chu Luiyue smiled. Miss Luo, if you have something to say, just say it. Luo Shishi was stunned. We can be considered friends now. You can call me by my name. Miss Luo sounded too distant and polite. Chu Luiyue followed suit. Shishi. Luo Shishi's eyelashes trembled slightly, as if something was gently rubbing against her heart. Chu Luiyue didn't notice it. She recalled the situation just now and smiled. Don't worry, I'm fine. Elder Ren is right. It's not so easy to be a weapon refiner. I just wanted to give it a try and see if I have the potential in this area. If I do, it's naturally good. If I don't, there's nothing to feel bad about. After all. The corners of her lips curled up slightly, but her eyes were filled with confidence. My talent as a celestial physician is not bad. As she spoke, her gaze swept across the surrounding people. The people who were discussing her earlier became quieter. No matter what, she was the only disciple that Elder Wanjing had taken a fancy to in the past 3 years. Just this alone was enough to beat up countless people. What right did they have to ridicule her? Seeing that she didn't seem to feel bad about it, Luo Shishi heaved a sigh of relief. That's true. Lingxiao College has recruited countless students over the years, but less than 100 people can make it to the weapon refiner list. It's normal that you can't make it. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and her gaze fell on the name at the top of the list. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Well, this is enough to show how powerful the people who can make it to the list are. Luo Shishi followed her line of sight and smiled. Yes. If all of them are as powerful as senior brother Rongxiu, how amazing would that be? Chu Luiyue didn't say anything else. At this moment, a familiar male voice suddenly came from not far away. Shishi. Luo Yanlin saw that his sister and the young man were standing together and seemed to be very close. He couldn't help but raise his voice. Come here. Chapter 1138. My fourth brother is calling me. I'm leaving now. See you tonight. Luo Shishi said softly to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. Luo Shishi pursed her lips into a smile and turned to leave with light footsteps. For some reason, Chu Luiyue felt a faint chill envelop her. She looked over and realized that the faintly discernible threatening aura came from Luo Yanlin. Luo Yanlin seemed to be a little surprised by her sharp senses. A trace of astonishment flashed across his face and he immediately narrowed his eyes. The warning in his eyes was obvious. Chu Luiyue understood what he meant, but she was confused. Warning, Luo Yanlin was warning her for no reason. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. Could it be because of Luo Shishir. Thinking about it carefully, she was with Luo Shishir just now. It might have been a misunderstanding. Chu Liuyue's eyes twitched. Luo Yanlin is thinking too much, isn't he? Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. If Luo Yanlin thinks this way, then Rong Xiu. She shook her head and suppressed these messy thoughts. Since I've officially become a student of Lingxiao College, it's most important to improve my strength as soon as possible. Besides, there's also Jun Jiuqing. A few days ago, Chu Luyue had already asked around and found out that Jun Jiuqing was considered an influential figure in the college. He was one of the top students in the college a few years ago. He had outstanding talent and improved at lightning speed. He once used only 3 months to climb from the bottom 10 to the top 20 of the Qingyun roll. This speed was heaven-defying. However, he only stayed in the college for a short period of time and left not long after. He never returned after that. As for his ranking, it slowly slid down in the following period of time, and now it was already in the 30s. However, many people still had a deep impression of him. This was because his master was a famous figure in the college, Elder Kulan. There were at least 180 elders in Lingxiao College. Elder Kulan was not the strongest among them, but he was still very famous. This was because he and the current dean were fellow disciples of the same sect. And their teacher was the previous dean of Lingxiao College. It was rumored that the dean had intended to choose between the two of them to inherit his position. He had always doted on his little disciple, Kulan. Everyone thought that this was his plan. However, he did not expect that in the end, he did not choose Kulan. Instead, he chose his eldest disciple, who was the current dean. Regarding this matter, everyone had different opinions. He also said that Kulan had done something wrong and angered the old principal, which was why she was stripped of her qualifications. There were also some who said that Kulan was framed and implicated innocently, which was why she was forced to hand over the position of dean to someone else. In short, no one could clearly explain what happened back then. However, the relationship between the dean and Elder Kulan seemed to be peaceful. As for the inside story, only they knew. However, it was also because of this that Elder Kulan's position in the academy was very special. All these years, he had only recruited 3 students. Jun Jiuqing was the 3rd one. Now, Jun Jiuqing did not seem to have returned to the academy. Chu Luyue could only temporarily suppress her thoughts and wait quietly. Since Jun Jiuqing wanted to use Chu Ning to threaten her, he would not dare to go too far. In this regard, Chu Luyue could somewhat be at ease. Now, all she could do was to raise her cultivation as quickly as possible while secretly searching for the truth. 4th brother, why are you looking for me? Luo Shishir returned to Luo Yanlin's side and asked. Luo Yanlin sized her up. When did you become so close to that Chuyu? Luo Shishir was stunned, and then her face turned slightly red. No, I just felt that since we entered the academy on the same day, it could be considered fate, so I thought that it would be good to be friends. Luo Yanlin's gaze was somewhat scrutinizing. However, seeing that his sister was slightly nervous, he could not bear to push her too hard, so he could only tactfully nod. That kid is somewhat talented in celestial physician, so it's fine to be friends. However, since you're already in the academy, your focus should still be on cultivation. Breaking through to the 9th rank is just the beginning for you. Only by being on the Azure Cloud leaderboard can our Luo family's reputation not be tarnished. Luo Shishir's expression became much more serious. 4th brother is right, Shishir will remember. That's good, go back and cultivate diligently. The lively examination at the beginning of the month finally came to an end in the evening. The qualified new students all had their own places to go, and most of them were excited and looking forward to life in the academy. On the Azure Cloud leaderboard, other than the blacksmith leaderboard which remained unchanged, there were some changes to the other 3 leaderboards. Some were on the leaderboard, some were off the leaderboard. Some were happy, some were regretful. However, this had nothing to do with Chu Luiyue. After the examination, Chu Luiyue and Elder Wanjing discussed that they would formally learn the next day, and then left Qingming Square and returned to their own residence. In the room, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged and fell into deep thought. Taizu, what do you think is going on with the illusion god Pearl? Chu Luiyue murmured in confusion. If she didn't have talent, then Tianlei clearly came out. If I say I have it. That thing just came out and went back. Taizu was silent for a while, and then said faintly, maybe you're too fierce. Chu Luiyue. Am I? Taizu, ha. Was he the one who forcibly captured those Tianlei people back then? Chu Luiyue. Cough. Wasn't that a special situation? Who would have thought that these Tianlei people would be like this? If you restrain yourself a little more, maybe it'll be better. Taizu thought for a while. But the chances are not high. Some things can't be hidden anymore. You should give up. Chu Luiyue, originally, she really wanted to learn how to forge a divine artifact. After thinking for a long time, Chu Luiyue couldn't figure it out, so she simply gave up. If she didn't want to cultivate, then so be it. She would first complete Elder Wanzhang's goal and get on the celestial physician list. Chu Luiyue put away her thoughts and began to focus on cultivation. The surrounding heaven and earth force flowed into her body and gradually formed an energy vortex above her head. Ever since she broke through to rank 7 and recovered her Tianjing Yuan meridian, Chu Luiyue's speed of devouring the force was much faster than before. Naturally, it was more convenient and faster for her to cultivate. Time passed bit by bit. The sky quickly darkened. The moon was in the middle of the sky. Unknowingly, a tall and slender figure quietly approached. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. She threw a punch. Bang! A warm and broad palm had already grasped her hand with great precision. A familiar cold fragrance attacked her. In an instant, it filled her body. Rong Xiao had already approached her. You deliberately made me wait for so long, His low and mellow voice was as seductive as the spring breeze in the dark night, making one's heart itch slightly. Digression, it's done. His long legs were stretched out as he quietly stared at Chu Luiyue with his deep eyes that seemed to be able to swallow everything. The gentleness and affection in his eyes seemed to be able to drown her. He sighed softly. His voice was much softer, but it was also filled with unquestionable certainty. If lying to you can exchange for a lifetime of peace and happiness, then I'm willing to lie to you for a lifetime. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. This was the first time Rong Xiao said such words to her. It was so straightforward and honest. Strictly speaking, Rong Xiao wasn't lying, but hiding. Every time she remembered something or discovered some truth, Rong Xiao wouldn't refute it. Instead, he would choose to admit it. It was like, in front of her eyes, there was a huge curtain that covered everything. Rong Xiao was standing behind the curtain. He didn't take the initiative to pull it away, but if she reached out, he wouldn't stop her. Chu Luiyue never understood why Rong Xiao did this. He knew a lot of things, but he refused to tell her everything. Chu Luiyue had many guesses in her heart, but she didn't expect to receive Rong Xiao's answer at such a time. She was silent for a moment, stared at Rong Xiao, and asked word by word, Rong Xiao, you don't want me to remember the past, right? Rong Xiao smiled, but shook his head. His slender fingers rubbed her palm carefully, as if he was holding a rare treasure. It's just that there are some bad things. Even if there was still their past in it. But, as long as it was for her, nothing else mattered. Rong Xiao once thought that it wasn't a bad thing to let her never remember that part of her memory. But some things seem to have been decided long ago. Since you've returned to the academy, I won't force you to leave. Rong Xiao suddenly exerted force and pulled her into his embrace. Everything about you is ultimately up to you. Then I'll just stand by your side and accompany you. Rong Xiao's expression was very calm. In the dark night, the faint moonlight shone on his face, making him look like an immortal and a demon. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Something seemed to be surging in her chest, making her whole body heat up slightly. She suddenly leaned forward and bit his lower lip. Rong Xiao's breathing stagnated, and he immediately tightened his grip on her waist. The world spun, and Chu Liyue was pressed against the soft mattress. She reached out and grabbed his shoulder, but he caught her with one hand. He easily and firmly held her two slender wrists above her head. Then, he deliberately raised his head slightly, avoiding her lips, and moved closer to her neck. He bit her tender and white earlobe, as if to vent his anger. Chu Liyue twisted her body uneasily and let out a low cry in her throat, but it was like a cat's meow, scratching people's ears and hearts. Rong Xiao's body instantly tensed up. He leaned closer to her and kissed her earlobe as if to comfort her, but his breath instantly became much hotter. The two of them were intimately entangled with each other, but they also seemed to want to take the opportunity to talk about something. Just as the air became hot and ambiguous, there was a sudden knock on the door. Knock knock. Then, it was a familiar woman's voice. Chu Yu. Are you there? It was Luo Shishir. Chu Liyue came back to her senses. Her originally hazy and moist eyes quickly became clear again. Right, they had previously agreed to go to Wine Mountain to celebrate tonight. However, when Rong Xiao came, she forgot about this matter. Chu Liyue pushed the man in front of her. When Rong Xiao heard the commotion outside, he hesitated for a moment. But it was only for a moment. Then, as if he didn't notice at all, he hugged her even tighter and kissed her slowly. Chu Yu. Luo Shishir called out strangely again. Why didn't anyone respond? Is he not here? This was Luo Yanming's voice. Of course not. We already agreed on this during the day. Luo Shishir said doubtfully. Chu Liyue glared at Rong Xiao warningly. Rong Xiao chuckled silently. The light in the depths of his deep eyes flashed casually, but there was a subtle sense of danger. Appointment. Chapter 1140. This voice didn't come from Rong Xiao's mouth, but it still reached Chu Liyue's ears clearly. It was low and hoarse, easily moving one's heart. Chu Liyue was dazed for a moment, but she quickly reacted and narrowed her eyes dangerously. She didn't believe that Rong Xiao didn't know about this. It's just a trip to Thousand Wine Mountain. Thousand Wine Mountain. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. She didn't know what he was thinking, but there was an unfathomable smile in his eyes. It's indeed a good place. She had just returned to the academy, and she was going there. Chu Liyue blinked. Why, can't I go to Thousand Wine Mountain? Looking at the way Rong Xiao mentioned Thousand Wine Mountain, it didn't seem like a compliment. Of course not. Rong Xiao smiled and gently tapped her lips. Go early and come back early. Be obedient and don't cause any trouble. Chu Liyue was speechless. She was just going to have fun with a few friends, not to fight or cause trouble. Rong Xiao's tone sounded like she was going to do something bad on purpose. Why is there no movement at all? Could it be that he's really not here? This was Zhuo Xing's voice. Why don't we go somewhere else to look? It shouldn't be. Since we've already agreed. Luo Shishir muttered. Let's go in and take a look. If there's no one, then we'll talk. Luo Yanming said and was about to push the door open. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. The moment the door opened, Rong Xiu's figure disappeared from the room. Chu Yu. Seeing Chu Luiyue sitting cross-legged on the bed, Luo Yanming was stunned. Why didn't you answer when I called you outside? Chu Luiyue slowly heaved a sigh of relief and jumped down from the bed. It's nothing. I was thinking about a prescription and was a little absent-minded, so I didn't hear you. In the dark night, the light in the room was very dim. They couldn't clearly see Chu Luiyue's slightly red and swollen lips, as well as his watery and hazy eyes. Chu Luiyue smiled. Let's go. Thousand Wine Mountain. When they arrived, the moon was already high in the sky. The bright moonlight slanted down, casting a faint blue shadow on the forest. The night breeze blew gently, and the leaves rustled. Occasionally, one could hear various sounds. Chu Luiyue listened attentively and realized that the noise seemed to be coming from the top of the mountain. Today is the beginning of the month. Many students will come here. Luo Shishir explained as if she had seen through Chu Luiyue's thoughts. We're already quite late. However, fourth brother has already helped us book a spot here, so we can just go there directly. Only then did Chu Luiyue realize that the 10,000 Wine Mountain was so particular. Isn't this place open to everyone? Why is it so troublesome? Chu Luiyue asked casually. Of course it's because of the spring. Shui Sheng, who was walking in front, suddenly turned around and chuckled. It seems like you really don't know. It's said that the spring water that gushes out from the spring is very beneficial to the cultivator's body. Sometimes, it can even help one break through the shackles and reach a higher level. Therefore, the closer to the spring, the more precious the spot is. Today is the beginning of the month, so there are the most people here. Of course, it's the hardest to get a spot. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. He could roughly guess what was going on. Everyone had worked hard during the day. It was rare for them to have a place to relax, so they naturally wouldn't miss it. The new students who passed the assessment wanted to celebrate. The older students who made it onto the Azure Sky roll also wanted to celebrate. Even those who were defeated couldn't help but have some thoughts of drowning their sorrows in alcohol. It wasn't surprising that this place would be so lively. Is the spring water really so magical? In comparison, Chu Luiyue was more curious about this. She had seen a lot of heavenly treasures, but she had never heard of such an existence. The spring water that gushed out from the spring had such amazing effects. It made people curious. Hee. I've only heard about it. As for the specific effects, won't we naturally know when we get up there? Shui Sheng smiled indifferently. Obviously, he didn't care much about these rumors. What he cared about was whether they could have a good time tonight. Chu Luiyue didn't ask any more questions and continued to walk up. The closer they got to the top of the mountain, the clearer the lively sounds became. It seemed to be mixed with the sound of a stream. Chu Luiyue looked towards the source of the sound. Unfortunately, she couldn't see clearly in the dense forest. She could barely see what seemed to be a stream flowing down. The moonlight shone on it, making it sparkle. It didn't seem to be anything special. Shui Sheng, why are you only here now? A hearty young man's voice suddenly came from the top of the mountain. We all thought that you weren't planning to come. Immediately after, Chu Luiyue saw a few people walking down from above. Shui Sheng laughed loudly. Ha! If we didn't come, wouldn't it be too boring? After listening to their conversation, Chu Luiyue understood their identities. They were also students that the Xian masters had just recruited today. Only the person talking to Shui Sheng at the front was a senior brother who had come to the academy about a year earlier than them. Coincidentally, he and Shui Sheng had known each other for a long time. Therefore, their relationship seemed to be very close. After that, Shui Sheng introduced them to each other. After hearing the name Chu Yu, those people's gazes paused on Chu Luiyue for a moment. However, most of their attention was still on Luo Shishir. Especially the young man who greeted Zhuoxing, he was very eager to Luo Shishir. Anyone could tell that he had feelings for Luo Shishir. From their words, it wasn't hard to tell that they knew each other. However, Luo Shishir didn't seem to be interested in him. She had always been reserved and polite and didn't even say much. Just like that, the group of people went up the mountain together in a subtle atmosphere. Thousand Wine Mountain was actually a very tall and majestic mountain peak. The top of the mountain was vast and could accommodate many people at the same time. Moreover, under the bright moonlight, the scenery was just right. Coupled with the rich and refreshing wine fragrance in the air, it was even more intoxicating. From afar, Chu Luiyue could smell that strange fragrance. She sniffed lightly and took a deep breath. She immediately felt as if her entire chest and abdomen were soaked in that intoxicating wine fragrance. However, this smell wouldn't really make people lose their minds. Therefore, the elders of the academy would turn a blind eye to the students relaxing on Thousand Wine Mountain on this day. After Chu Luiyue reached the top of the mountain, she immediately saw the spring in the middle. Chapter 1141. Speaking of which, it was strange. This spring was growing at the top of Thousand Wine Mountain. No one knew how the spring water gushed out. The size of the mouth of the spring was about the size of a normal well. The edge of the mouth of the spring was made of translucent white mountain rocks. It was unknown whether it was because of the spring water or because the moonlight was too bright, but in any case, the mouth of the spring looked exceptionally clear and moist. From afar, there was still spring water gushing out of the spring. Then, it flowed down, forming a stream that spread down from the mountain peak. There were many people standing around. Some of them directly filled their wine jugs or wine cups, drank it all in one gulp, or slowly tasted it. Everyone chatted with each other, and the atmosphere was very lively. Chu Luiyue and the others arrived at the location they had agreed on earlier. It was actually a boundary beside the stream. There was still a small distance between this place and the spring. Chu Luiyue scanned her surroundings and recognized the people standing closest to the spring. They seemed to be her senior brothers and senior sisters who were very strong. When the people beside them looked over, they were obviously envious. However, no one crossed the line. Obviously, everyone here was very obedient. I really don't know when we'll be able to stand closest to the spring. It was rare for Zhuoxing to lower his voice, his eyes filled with envy. I heard that the spring water that has just gushed out of the spring contains the purest energy. When it flows down, its effect will be greatly weakened. If we can stand there. Hey! Who doesn't want to in the academy? But how can this be so easy? You have to know that the people standing there are all in the top 50 of the Azure Cloud Roll. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. Top 50, that was basically 40 or so. Otherwise, they would directly say top 40, or even top 30, and so on. In the academy, this ranking could definitely be considered as one of the most outstanding. Of course, it could not be said to be the top. On the contrary, the most powerful ones would not appear in such a place. Chu Luiyue retracted his gaze and took a few steps closer to the stream to take a closer look. Standing here, he could indeed feel a subtle aura contained within. It was as if it was some kind of very special pure energy. Chu Luiyue was curious. It was said that this Thousand Wine Mountain was just an ordinary mountain back then. On a certain day 1,000 years ago, for some unknown reason, there was a strange phenomenon in the world. Wind and thunder rumbled. After the chaos, such a wonderful thing had appeared on the 10,000 Wine Mountain. It had been a very long time since then. TSK, the wine of this myriad wine mountain is indeed good stuff. Zhuoxing could no longer hold back his curiosity and casually poured himself a cup. After drinking it, his eyes immediately lit up. You guys give it a try too. Luo Yanming and Gushi Yi also tried drinking a few mouthfuls. They were pleasantly surprised. It is indeed a good item. This seems to be even more fragrant than the 9-leaf green that we drank in the clan before. At this moment, Chu Luo felt a weight on his shoulder. She turned her head and saw that Dumpling had unknowingly appeared and was squatting on her shoulder. At this moment, its eyes were shining as it looked at the flowing spring water with a longing look. Chu Luo, you want it? Dumpling nodded frantically. Yes. I want to. This smell is simply too fragrant, alright. Chu Luo rarely saw it like this, so she could not help but laugh. She took out a cup, filled it to the brim, and handed it to it. Here, for you. Dumpling poked its head in and drank a mouthful. Its eyes shone even more brightly. In a short while, Dumpling had finished all the spring water in the cup. It smacked its lips and looked at Chu Luo eagerly. Its eyes were full of emotions. You want more? Chu Luo glanced at its stomach suspiciously. Dumpling had not revealed its true body now. It was only the size of a palm. The cup just now could have contained it. She didn't know how it managed to drink so much spring water. Now, it wanted more. Dumpling inched closer to her and pecked her on the cheek. Then, it used its furry little head to rub against her face. Its lackey nature was completely exposed. Chu Luo, Chu Yu, is this your contracted magical beast? Luo Shishi asked in surprise. Chu Luo nodded. Hiss, this seems to be a red-tailed phoenix. Luo Yanming, who was standing at the side, could not hide her surprise. This was a divine beast. Moreover, it was a divine beast with an extremely strong bloodline power. Even they might not be able to contract such a divine beast. Luo Shishi also widened her eyes slightly. She knew that Chu had a divine beast contract. Otherwise, he would not have taken the initiative to ask for the refiner's test during the day. However, she did not expect Chu Yu's divine beast to be such a powerful existence. I really couldn't tell. Chu Yu, how old are you? You actually have such a divine beast contract. Shuixing glanced at it and was also shocked. Aren't you a celestial physician? How can you contract such a powerful divine beast? They all knew that Chu Yu's realm as a warrior was only at the early stage of the 7th stage. According to his talent and strength, there should be no reason for him to be able to subdue such an arrogant divine beast. Chu Luo smiled faintly. I'm just lucky. But isn't this too good? Shuixing could not help but murmur as he looked at Chu Luo with a strange gaze. Where did you come from? According to such a family background, he should be a disciple of a first-class family, right? Chu Luo smiled but did not say anything. He had no intention of revealing his identity. Luo Shishi and the others did not care. In Lingxiao College, students could come from any place or force on the continent. For various reasons, many people were not willing to completely expose their origins. In addition, in the college, there was the guidance and supervision of the dean and elders. Everyone's focus would be on cultivation and not other aspects. Therefore, when a person did not want to reveal his background and origin, others would tactfully not ask anymore. In any case, in the college, these were all secondary. As long as you were outstanding enough, you did not need to care about anything else. Chu Luo teased Dumpling. If you want more, you can drink it yourself. In any case, they were standing by the stream. Dumpling only needed to fly down. However, Dumpling shook its head and looked in a certain direction with bright eyes full of eagerness. Chu Luo followed its gaze and the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. You! Don't tell me you want to go to the spring to drink it. Dumpling flapped its wings. Yes. It's there. Chu Luo, she grabbed Dumpling's wings and lifted it up, looking straight into its eyes. Tuanzi, do you have any misunderstandings about yourself or about your master? She did not even have the qualifications to go there, but it was interested. Dumpling looked at her eagerly. Let it go. The legendary three-eyed eagle's cold and indifferent voice suddenly sounded. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.